Well, thank you so much for watching our film. And thank you, Stacy and Charles and Michelle and David and Franklin and our team. Our fourth producer, Afshin Shahidi, is in the room here somewhere. Let's give him a hand. I'm going to try to get to a fun story fast because I cry at every time, and so we'll try to get something fun going on, but as much as we can. But and with all great Michael stories. Yeah, so thank you for having us. We're going to just chat about the film a little bit, talk about Michael, share some thoughts. And one thing, and I don't know why I thought it would be a good idea to self-moderate. They're like, we should get a moderator. I'm like, no, I can do it. And then I'm sitting there and like, what the fuck did I think I was doing?
I did think that was weird, but you wanted to do it.
I should have just listened to Jesse. I always listen to Jesse. Anyways, for lack of a better moderator, I'm going to be talking.
Ask yourself questions.
Exactly. Well, I'm going to, because I'm going to ask questions that have been asked to me and pretend that I'm not me asking. And the question that everyone asks, which is how did the film come to be? And it ends with a great Michael story. So, I'm an artist, visual artist by most trade. I'm sort of pivoting into film, and I'm really enjoying it. And my first Sundance, it's so exciting to be here and really great. But for over 10 years, I've been working with the athlete Tommie Smith, who in 1968 did the salute on the Olympic Games. We just recently had a big piece that was acquired by the Smithsonian. It was really exciting. And Jesse and Afshin and a lot of us have been on this journey to help reconcile and connect and heal Tommie's history. And one of the things that we did was we all helped him start his foundation, the Tommie Smith Youth Initiative. And so the sculpture we made is a cast arm, and so every year for the gala for the initiative, I make the award for the nominee, and I go to the gala. And so a few years back, I'm at the gala, and the honoree is Ambassador Andrew Young, And so I'm sitting in the back, and I'm like the Asian guy in the back, like eating my food. And just as a side note, whenever Afshin and I, we've done hundreds of interviews with Tommie. Every time we see, usually a politician, interview with Tommie, for some reason, they always want to flex like their old, youthful, athletic prowess. And they're talking to a 13-time world champion, so Tommie is always like, it's okay, son. But Andrew Young is no exception. He gets on stage and he says, hey, Tommie, did I ever tell you the time that Dr. King and I used to play basketball to connect with kids in the movement? And I dropped my fork. I jumped out of my table and I literally ambushed Andrew Young because he was like in and out. I ambushed him on the way to the parking lot. And I said, Ambassador Young, my name's Glenn Kaino. I did the Tommie Smith movie, and I'd love to, tell that story on film. And he says, I love basketball. I love Dr. King. Yeah, sure, let's do it. And then the first phone call I made right after that from the church was to Michael. And I said, I got us the project that we've been looking for. And by context, Michael had been a vital part of the studio, my studio. And I've been doing and working on a number of different public art projects, a number of different immersive shows, and Michael, was our community builder. A lot of my projects start with community. They're intended to expand and grow communities, and Michael was that vital part of literally across the board everything we were doing. But there was not a project yet that we had come up with where he could be the foregrounding star as well. And many of us know Michael here, and Michael was like very happy to be the connector. But I was like, I'm going to force you, we're going to produce this film, we're going to make it, we're going to center you, and we're going to do this. And he was like, yeah, we got it. And we started doing it. And so he said, what's the first job? I said, well, we got to go raise some money. And we got the commitment from Andrew, we got to raise some money and figure that out. And he said, sure. And so shortly after, I was doing an exhibition at the Japanese American National Museum, and I was installing, and if you can imagine, when you install a show, you got a short period of time, you got to put your art up there and make it good. And so Michael has set a call for us with an organization that ended up really being helpful and vital to us. It's called For Freedoms. Many of you probably know. And he said, I got the money. We can, talk to these people. And we got on the phone, and it's a 5 or 8 way call. And the first thing that the lady from For Freedom says is, "Oh, we don't have any money, by the way. We're not here to support anything." And I'm busy. I'm installing a show, right? So I'm like, "Hey, Michael, you could finish this call, right?" And he says, "Yeah, sure." And I hang up and I go back to the museum. And 3 hours later, I'm done with the install. I text Michael. I said, "How'd that call go?" And I get him on the phone, and he says, "It went great. We got the money." I said, "What are you talking about?" I literally heard the woman say, "We have," like she said the words, "We have no money." And so a couple hours next day, Michael convenes us all on a Zoom, and somehow Michael had connected more dots inside of even For Freedoms, connected funders to For Freedoms, and got people and you know, Chris Middleton and Brittany Middleton and Whitney Cronkey and a few other people to come in and commit to help, you know, give us our first money to start shooting, which is really great because right after that, you know, Michael had helped us convince Ambassador Andrew Young to get the interview, and it took all of us to go do that, and it was really great. And he said, "What's the next thing you do?" And I said, "Next thing we have to build a team because we can't do this by ourselves." You know, he says, and, you know, of course, Michael, like 50 people came up the list, and he says, "Oh, the first person I want you to meet, though, you know, is this woman Alexys Feaster. I just met her. She's great." And so she you know, worked for the NBA and does all this stuff. And of course, I met Alexys, and we shared a similar, obviously, love for Michael. But and then Alexys came in, and so I'd like to ask you now. I'm moderator hat, Alexys. How did you meet Michael? And you know, let's talk. And then I have after you tell that story, I will tell her background a bit. She'll tell more. Alexys spent a long time at the NBA in player development, and a long time also in President Obama's office, doing a lot of political strategy. So she's the perfect person to help connect all these dots. So let's start with, how did you meet Michael?
Thank you. So I met Michael through a mutual friend, and she said, I know you know Michael like everybody does. I said, well, I've heard his name before because he's like this mythical figure that has been helping people all over the country, and I just can't believe I don't know him yet. And so we got connected. I told him about being out in LA, and he said, let's meet up for dinner. Great. Get to dinner, and he has a gift for me. And immediately, gifting is my love language, just FYI for everyone out there. And I said, this is like, who does this, right? Who meets you for dinner and immediately has a book to hand to you? And the book he gave me was called True Love. So then I was super confused because I'm like, why is he giving me a book on true love? Does he know that I'm looking for true love? But I don't know what's happening. But at the end of the day, we shared a dinner that went on for about 4 hours, and the restaurant told us we had to leave. But during that time, I had the opportunity to share a bit of my background, which I won't go too far into detail. But long story short, I led President Obama's athlete and celebrity strategy during his reelection campaign, a time when many people thought he wasn't going to win a second term. And so, as you can imagine, all the ins and outs of what came from that. But one of the things that was most difficult was that people of color and athletes and entertainers didn't think that President Obama had done enough after he got elected the first time for our community. So it was a really difficult situation to get people to get galvanized. And so I was explaining to Michael what I was able to do to build community around President Obama. So I was in the music industry in LA, got a phone call to go run this department. And so I'm telling him all these things, and his eyes are getting big. He's like, wow, so you were able to go and help with this strategy. So I was telling him about that. After helping President Obama get reelected, there was a lockout that happened in 2011 during that time. And so I met a lot of people at the NBA. There was the NBA lockout, for those who remember. And from helping the NBA during that lockout and helping get players involved, the NBA then recruited me to lead their player development work. And so did that for several years, but then George Floyd was murdered, and that changed everything, obviously, for all of us. So I had to move into the bubble in Orlando with, 90% men of color who felt like they were being sequestered in a bubble to entertain the world. That's not a good feeling, of course. And you had so many athletes that felt like they were being used as pawns, as entertainment for the world to see. And during that time, Jacob Blake was also murdered. There was a game that was happening that day with the Milwaukee Bucks, and I'm in my room. We had to get sequestered first before we were allowed to be released in the bubble. And I get a call from the locker room, and it's the Bucks players, and they're saying, "Can you call Obama for me? We're trying to figure out what to do. We're about to boycott this game. We don't know the next steps." And I'm like, I don't have him on speed dial. I wish I did, but it doesn't quite work that way. But long story short, being in that environment, being able to help during that time led to me actually leaving the NBA and starting my own company. And so that's how, we all got connected over the past several years. And so, as you mentioned, Glenn, I then got introduced to you. And, Michael was the one who advocated for me. He was the one who said, there's no other person I know who's led the NBA in the way that you have, that ran Obama shop. We're doing this film, and I'd love to be a part of the team. And so, of course, I'm honored. Now I'm a filmmaker, y'all. This is what we do. So,
so Jesse, let's start with all our Michael intros. And how did you meet Michael?
I honestly don't remember the first time I saw Michael, but he was everywhere. Black people were. I would see him in Flint, Michigan at our fundraiser for Flint. We were doing movement work around Ferguson or in Florida, or underground museum. And it's like, who is this white boy everywhere? He's real nice, but... And that's the thing. Michael just really was that nice. He really is looking into your soul, and he's present, and he's not asking for anything, and he's not in the middle of anything. And he was just a lovely, refreshing energy. And so, once I got to know him, I got to know him, and I'm so grateful for that each and every day. And so yes, I met him through his generosity, which is to be present and available for other people, and figure out ways that he can be of service and be creative and be quiet and be forceful when he needed to be. Prison, his work around prison and recidivism and reform is just tremendous, and he showed improved. Never asked for credit or ego, or never was in the front of the line. And in movement work, in these times, in Los Angeles, all those things are very unique characteristics. He's just from a different time. So that was a clear and lasting and honest reflection of who he is.
Alexys has a really great story that I'm going to force her to tell about a very. Cause I love secret stories and things that maybe people don't know, and we got part of it on the screen. But there was a game that you organized with President Obama and a bunch of NBA folks. Can you tell them a little bit about that? Because I think it's awesome.
It's basically a little bit of backstory on the basketball game. And funny, every time I watch our film, it reminds me of something else. And so what had happened was President Obama was like, obviously he's an athlete, basketball player. And, the word on the street was like, what's the issue, right? Like, why aren't we getting more athletes and folks out on the campaign trail? And I said, well, it doesn't quite work like that. You have to have strategy, right? You're asking Black men who haven't voted, who haven't even registered to vote. Not all of them, but this population, obviously I worked at the NBA, so I know that the population of athletes who are registered to vote was only about 22% at the time. And so, we had to galvanize people to get excited to vote and to campaign on behalf of the president. And so, again, everyone thought it'd be easy. Just ask him. He's a Black president. He plays ball. That's a connective tissue enough. I'm like, no, it doesn't. They want to play ball with him. They want to say that they've been on the court with the president of the United States. And so after a lot of coercing and convincing of the team, I said, I think the strategy here, there's an NBA lockout that's happening. We have a very short window because the way the CBA works is that athletes aren't allowed to play and risk injuring their body for like pickup games. It's just not something that they're allowed to do. So as soon as the lockout happened, we were like, bet, let's do this. So we got, Carmelo Anthony and Michael Jordan and all the guys. And we're like, we're going to play this secret game. There's a court in the Lincoln Center. For those who didn't know, there's like a secret basketball court there. And got to President Obama and said, we're going to play this game. And you need to ensure that, you show these guys how good you can really play. Like, you need to show up and, let's act like you're good. I know you can play, I know you can play, with your friends, but let's see how this works. I know he plays with Strop, but let's see how it is against MJ and Carmelo. And so we invited them to the Lincoln Center, and everyone had to put their cell phones in the little plastic baggies. And we go in, and literally President Obama walks in with his hard bottom shoes, just like Dr. King, which is crazy. He rolls up his sleeves. He took off his tie, though. Unbuttoned his top buttons, and he proceeded
Played in those shoes?
He played in those shoes.
Why?
I have no idea.
Plenty of time to bring shoes.
We got a picture of him in Jordans, like on the film. So
Right. He literally like rolled his sleeves. He had just come from a fundraiser, so little extra other tidbit. But ask him when you see him.
Cocky move. Okay.
It was, yeah. So that's what they did, and so we played basketball, and all of the players that were there, after using the game to bond them, very similar to the stories around Dr. King, they were in. They're like, oh, this is our people. This is someone who cares about us. That there's something that I feel connected to in this man beyond just the color of my skin and the fact that we share a hobby. They were able to share moments together. And I'm just really proud of that moment to create that strategy. And then I started Athletes for Obama and created these coalitions, because that's how you community build, right? You create these coalitions. And they all went out on the campaign trail. All of them registered to vote because we didn't want to look crazy, because you can look it up. So we're like, everybody has to register. Let's make sure everybody's good. And then they went out on the trail. And as you all probably remember, that's what was happening and during the re-election is you couldn't look left or right without seeing people like that out on the campaign trail, getting on the planes, doing door knocking, all the things that we needed them to do to win. And of course we won. So
that's awesome. Jesse, you were talking about Michael's uniqueness in the moment, particularly now. We're about to go transition into some tumultuous times, let's say. And one of the things that brought me to the Tommy story was when Tommy, when I first went to meet Tommy Smith, one of the first he made sure to tell me was, he said, look, I said the word human rights, because he said, for me, that salute was intended to be inclusive, so as a black man, for him, it was about black power, but he meant human power, and it's for all. And I thought, wow, as an Asian American artist, just by way of background, I had a little picture of that taped to the corner of my iMac, for my entire career. And a buddy of mine walked in and he pointed out, he says, "Oh, Coach Smith, you want to meet him?" And I was like, "Coach Smith? Like, what are you talking about? Coach is only the name you call someone who's your coach, And so he invited me to go. Tommy wanted to meet me. He invited me to go there, and shortly after, I'm sitting on Tommy's couch, and he played the race that he ran, step by step, and it was wild. And I'll just I'm segueing into my own story, Jesse. I've been a bad moderator.
I've been there,
I have a
believe
throw
me.
for you. I have a throw for you. So Tommy plays on the VHS tape of the race that he won, step by step, and it's remarkable. And I'm sitting there just soaking it in, and an hour
explaining the science and decisions he was making with his pace, and yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. And an hour on the hour, his wife Delois, who's now a good friend of all of ours, she cuts him off. She says, "Tommy, shut up. Glenn, why are you here?" She said, "Tommy will talk all night long if you let him, but we need to know why you're here." It's like, I'm not here with any opinion or idea. I have an observation, if I may. I said, it seems like you're in a time bubble. What if we could work together on something that happens in the now, that allows you to be a witness of this rich history? And we started making art together. And but one of the things he made sure to tell me was that he wanted his legacy to be inclusive. He wanted it to be, a spearhead, leading the charge, but he never wanted it to be exclusive. And the world had transformed this moment of black pride for a black man into this divisive icon, where it was black against white, and it was Boolean. It was like, only one or the other, not both. And Tommy said, how do we create a moment to explain that my intention was it to be galvanizing and unifying, and we can all do that together. And so you talked about like the old school version of how Michael was a assembler. What do we think is, as we go into a moment that is through technology and through government now, are forcing us to be divisive, or asking us to be divisive? What are some elements of community, that might be ones that we can think about?
Interesting. I feel like it's a cyclical nature and societal kind of patterns and anthropological patterns, and how we find collective, find community. And the internet has proven to be a great resource for being able to hear and learn and access all information that you could possibly want. But it also, of course, we've seen it turn into being us all plugged into our own little silos, our own little world. So it can both be a gift or a weapon. And I think that people are returning to human connection and a need for sharing real space and being in fellowship with each other and making eye contact and being patient, to being present and not being half on your phone and half on your way somewhere else. I think that there is a return to really being present, because anything you don't do for a while feels new and different and good. It throws you off the rhythm or a crippling pattern. So I do feel like I'm seeing in folks, I don't know, between 15 and 50, a new, invigorated willingness and interest in live events, immersive events, going out and being together. I say that also, don't live in New York anymore, which is very different than LA, but LA is a very segregated series of suburbs. It's not a city. It's 42 suburbs in search of a city, I think. And so it's very easy for us to not interact with anybody you did not plan on being with. It wasn't already in your calendar. It's like that movie Crash. Like you don't have to, you go in your car and your underground parking and your highway and your office, and you don't actually have to interact with anybody of a different culture. It's the opposite of riding the train in New York. And I don't know, I just find being in fellowship with folks has a new value, a renewed value that gives me hope and optimism. I mean, we all come out here to the cold, and I know a lot of y'all don't like the cold and wouldn't otherwise be in this environment, but we do it because there's a really positive energy in this place. This is probably my 5th time coming, And I often say I come here and I don't even see films sometimes. I'm just in fellowship with people, and it's a neighborhood. You get a neighborhood atmosphere, and I think that folks are finding ways to unplug, thankfully. Use it as a tool to gather, to organize, to call people out on their shit, but also just have people over and just sit and be quiet. And that's where real things germinate. I think real ideas stew. You think about the time we spend in Glenn's studio and just cooking up ideas, and 7 of them are bad, but that one good one can turn into something really, really wonderful. And that doesn't really happen on the internet in the same way.
I'll just jump in and add and say that that's what Michael is all about. Getting people together in real space, physical space.
Yeah, earlier I didn't say Michael was tweeting a lot. I said he was there.
Exactly.
He got in his car and made a plan and didn't double book himself and didn't flake, and he was there. In LA, that takes some doing. Everywhere is 20 to 70 minutes away.
So I'll just share one last Michael story, and I get emotional when I tell this story. But I think it's important just to say in relationship to the team building, because one of the key theses there were a couple key theses of the film. One is that showing the stories that we've shown sort of brings our heroes down to our level, but it also hopefully paints a pathway for us to aspire to be at their level. It's really about connecting the dots, and that was Michael and my vision for what the story was that we wanted to tell and how we wanted to bring people together. In that we call Michael our point guard. There's 5 producers. He was our point guard for making this thing, and I just think it's so important what you said about being in physical space. And the last little bit, and I'm sure everyone has this in the room, and maybe I'll open up for questions if we have any time. But we say that everyone who knew Michael thought he was your best friend, and I always describe it like when I have 2 kids, and when I have a kid, and you're like, oh, well, that sucks, like, because how am I gonna love my next kid if I have another kid, and then you have another kid, and you realize like your heart gets bigger, and when we talk about Michael, and we're in spaces like this, and when Stacey, when you were introducing the Michael's backstory and meeting here, and I saw everyone's head nod, and everyone's like, oh, we met Michael here, and it's just wonderful because for me and for us, and sharing the story, and hopefully a lot of people get to see it. Like hopefully all of our hearts can open, and we're all on the same team together. So that's what we've got so far. Do we have any questions maybe for the audience? From the audience? Ooh, then maybe we out.
That good, huh? You have a question, Vanessa?
Hey, this is so fantastic, and I love the animation part. Did you do that, Glenn?
No, we have a fantastic animator named Kirill Uretsky, and I collaborated with him on it. But yeah, he's
for sure. I thought there was more story. Like I wanted to see even more. So, is there anything in the work to expand the film, or?
Yeah, I mean, we have material to expand it. I think that
okay.
If the opportunity arises. So.
A nice balance of leaving you wanting more and having more bullets in the chamber, exactly. To grow. There's a lot of room to grow in this world. We have a question here.
Glenn, you talked about the divisive times that we're entering. For all 3 of you, what role do you see sports and basketball playing as we go into those times?
Yeah, I feel like that's already been a blueprint of how sports has done that. We were talking yesterday about the WNBA and the women of the WNBA who have sacrificed their jobs and their careers in order to make a difference and make a stand. I see that continuing to progress, especially in the political times that we're in. And as we all know, sport is a great unifier, right? So you go to a game and you could be black, white, purple, different, political affiliations, and you can sit and be in fellowship and cheer for the same team. And so our hope is that through this film and showing how Dr. King did that this will be a seed to spark how just sitting next to each other at a game is one thing, but how do you make a difference and build community knowing that your neighbor is just like you? So the hope is that this is the story that helps to ensure that our minds and hearts are open bigger, as Glenn said. And so I just see it continuing to grow and continue to make a difference.
I think the sports have proven to be the great debunker of the myths of the day around whether it's racism or sexism. No matter what trends and manipulations of power are utilized to suffocate populations, people are still playing sports. And once they got desegregated and you couldn't keep that lie up, the truth proves itself on the court. Those people get along, they complement each other. The lies you tell about this religion or ethnicity or anything, it's bullshit. And you get to see it because this arena, those doors stay open no matter what we're going through and what decade. You know, people say, you know, why are, you know, black folks so good at sports? Why is that something that we're just so much better at than everybody? And I would say black people aren't excellent just at sports. We're excellent at everything. Sports is just the only thing you couldn't keep us from doing. You couldn't legislate us from dribbling a basketball. You could stop us from going to your schools. You could stop us from swimming in your pool. You could stop us from walking down the street or buying a sandwich. You couldn't stop us from throwing a ball. So while you tried to stifle evolution in every other section of society, this was still blossoming, and those plants were still being watered. And now what? You're superior to us? You're joking. So that doesn't work well for the narrative. So I think that works in the future as well. I think that no matter what hard times we're going through with legislative policy change and culture shifts and attempts to shut us up and hide us and make us illegal, this is a field that will find ways to gather on and express and love each other and grow together. And that those images are not going to be erased.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
One more question.
I don't know if you have an answer to this question, but it seems like it's been really important politically to have someone playing basketball wearing dress shoes. And politically now, we're in a bad place with who's in office. So do you see any future leaders that you've worked with or coming down the pipeline that might organize in that way that we could look forward to?
Shouting out Governor Westmore.
That's
it. Westmore, let's go. Let's go. I know DMV in the house.
But then I'll just answer. I'll answer that a little bit too. I was thinking about Wes when you said that. But I think that's why we made the film. You know, because there's young folks who like I've been describing this as sort of like the colored pages in the middle of the big long black and white history book. You know, where you go to first and skim. And I think that for me, like even with the Tommy thing, like when you think of Martin Luther King, you think of a day, you think of a holiday, you think I get to not go to school. You know, and you think of all these really heroic things that he's done, you know, and you say, wow, how do I do that? That's really far away, you know, and then you hopefully see something like this, young person sees something like this and says, oh, I could do that too, you know, and that's sort of like what we're hoping to do. And I guess, you know, it's not an immediate game, you know, it's a long game, you know, and as part of this, we talked to Dr. Gerald Durley in Atlanta. He didn't make it into the film, but he said something really great. He said, you know, equality is a long game, you know, and it doesn't matter if you're down and on the 1 yard line on the opposing field, you know what I mean? Like you can still win that game. It just takes time to get there, and you got to just do it inch by inch, you know. So you know, hopefully contributions like this and this work, you know, maybe just inch the ball forward just a little bit. So, anyways, thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming out. Thank you.
This, I have to say, I cannot thank you all enough for this. It is such a beautiful film. Congratulations to all of you in the making of this film. Thank you for sharing this with the Macro Lodge. I have one question, which is how can we talk about it more? How can we make sure that this film gets seen by people, not just at this festival? Where will it be next?
We're trying to work that out right now. So pray, we can all do. Tell your friends. This is my first Sundance, but apparently this is where people are interested in film. And so hopefully there are people here that want to do stuff. And we have some interest, so we're excited about the possibility. So yeah.
He's being very modest. It's going to be fine. It's about distribution, right? Finding creative, interesting ways to not just have it bought and live on a shelf somewhere, but to be shared and used as curriculum and inspiration for more, you know, an expanded a cadre of forms of expression around this topic. And to, you know, Martin Luther King Day happens every year. You know, this is a ritual for us for good reason, for increasing, you know, with increasing value. So there's a lot of ways that this can continue to be expansive and explosive for multiple generations.
Thank you all. Thank you all so much.